Hey friends, Zach here to talk a little bit about the Mandela Effect. This is something I first heard about within the last year, probably about 6 months ago, and it immediately caught my attention due to the examples that were particularly able to be referenced from my childhood or my past. And there's a lot of different ideas bouncing around. Some people are making this idea into something of a conspiracy theory involving the government and Illuminati and all these different things. Some people are looking at it as almost like a physics kind of thing. There's all kinds of different ideas bouncing around. And those of you who know me, I think can understand that I'm pretty grounded and open about the different considerations. So what I'm trying to pose here is not so much a take on what I think is going on, but rather an open discussion of a few different ideas. So first of all, what is the Mandela Effect? It has this name because of the first example that really came into the awareness of people. Nelson Mandela, who is a political figure of some sort. I don't really know much about him, actually. I'm not that incredibly great with history. He was in prison for years, and at a certain point, he was said to have passed away, and his funeral was broadcast on television. A lot of people have this memory. And then at a certain point, it turns out that he got released from jail, I think a decade later or something, years later. And this puzzled some people, and they started talking about it like, oh, I thought he had already passed away. So it started to draw some attention that there was a big variation in people's perceptions. And that is what founded the idea of the Mandela Effect. As people explored it and considered more of it, there turns out to be a lot of examples. There are a lot of things that 90% or so of the population will remember one thing, but when you look up the documented evidence, it's actually something very different. So, let me get into a couple examples to hopefully pique your guys' interest with this. One that really stood out to me was in the movie Star Wars, okay? That was a big part of my life. In middle school, I was all about it. So, I just recently saw a picture of C-3PO, which is the gold robot droid guy, and one of his legs is silver. The whole rest of him is gold, but one of his legs is silver. That blows my mind. I have a pretty solid memory of him being all gold. And if you look up Star Wars freak fans, I'm not quite in the realm of a freak level fan. I liked it a lot, but I'm not like a huge fan. But anyways, fans are blown away. The people that are obsessed with Star Wars are blown away because they completely remember him being solid gold. Now you can look up toys. You can look up the old VHSs, and they are all represented with the silver leg. That's the really fascinating, strange thing about the Mandela Effect, is you can look up old examples, and it's as though the original copies of everything changed. It's not as though all of a sudden they decided to change the design. When I describe the Mandela Effect to people, a lot of times they take it as though at a certain point they changed the script of a movie or changed some element of a movie or a song or something. And all the later releases showed this new addition. That's not the case with the Mandela Effect. That's what's so mind-blowing about it. You can look up a VHS from whatever the 70s of Star Wars, and you will see the silver leg on C-3PO. Another Star Wars one that also stood out to me is probably the most famous line in the whole trilogy, where Darth Vader says, "Luke, I am your father." Right? That's not in the movie. He says, "No, I am your father." And that just really stood out to me because, again, I watched those movies probably dozens of times when I was a kid. Anyways, I don't want to dwell too much on Star Wars. Let's cover a little bit more ground. Snow White, this one I think is particularly relevant to a lot of girls. The scene where she is in the mirror, she says, most people remember her saying, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest one of all." That line is not in the movie. It's "magic mirror on the wall," which seems pretty strange, right? Forrest Gump, the line, "Life is like a box of chocolates." A lot of people remember that. Pretty significant line. That's not in the movie anymore. Now it's "life was like a box of chocolates, which seems pretty strange. Let me go a little bit into some ideas before I give some more examples. So let's get into the more trippy, strange element. A lot of people are proposing that there's alternate timelines, and this is an idea that runs into like quantum physics and things, but people are proposing the idea that there are different concurrent timelines, and for whatever reason, some people are crossing over into different timelines, almost like the idea of crossing into parallel realities. So those of us that have these memories that we cannot find evidence of in our world, in our reality, are from a different timeline. Doesn't quite resonate with me, but maybe, I don't know. I mean, it's fascinating, but it sounds a little too new age and weird for me. I'm open-minded, but that's pretty strange. Something that comes to my mind is like the idea of in the Matrix, okay? So let's look at, this is like my own kind of theory. I'm not saying this is what it is, but it's a weird idea. So let's think of like reality as being a code, okay? Like everything in reality is made up of these, like a computer program. It's all a bunch of code, and everything we see in reality, all the physical matter, is coded into reality. So let's say you go into this code, some alien goes into the code, or God, whatever. The code is changed. And then every reference to that bit of code changes throughout the whole world. So a book that you might have read yesterday, you can go back and look at it, and it's now different. Pretty weird, right? Some people think that it's related to quantum physics and quantum particles. If we consider that quantum particle arrangements are what dictate occurrence, and we are always interacting with quantum particles, perhaps at some point they just decided to arrange in a different pattern, and that is why we are experiencing reality seemingly different today than we were yesterday. A really interesting thing about the Mandela Effect is when you look up the timeline, there are instances where you can look back at internet data, for instance, and see it being referenced a certain way. You can go back each day, and then all of a sudden it's just different. It's as though one day it just changed, and from that point on, everybody referenced it different psychologically, which to me makes me think that, the idea of false memories. I'm trying to explain this to myself psychologically. Well, there's got to be a reasonable explanation, right? So, on an individual level, we can think, well, false memories. Okay, I just completely remember something that didn't happen. That happens in psychology. But when you start looking at a lot of data and you look at there being a huge percentage of people, I mean, some of these things, there's 90% of the people remember it a certain way, and it's not that way anymore. Nobody can find evidence of that. That's bizarre, to say the least. It's hard to really wrap our heads around it. Some people think the idea that there could be time travel involved, which again is sci-fi and just insane sounding, but maybe the case. Somebody goes back in time, changes one little thing. Not that there would be any significance. Oh, let me go back and change Star Wars, right? That would be ridiculous. But like the chaos theory, butterfly effect. Let's say somebody goes back to 1930s and changes one little thing, and that ripple winds through time and causes a change where Star Wars is a little bit different, where Snow White is a little bit different, where Forrest Gump is a little bit different. Seems ridiculous, but who knows? Maybe that is the case. A lot of people now are relating it to CERN, and this is where a lot of the conspiracy theory element goes into, and I'm not really too much of a conspiracy theorist myself, but I can't help but be very fascinated with the possibility. CERN is where the quantum particle accelerator, or not quantum particle, but the particle accelerator is. I think it's in Switzerland or something, I believe. Anyhow, this has always been a topic of a certain amount of controversy because of the possibility of there being some detriment to our world from particle collisions. The idea of formulating black holes, some people think that's a very real possibility. Others say it's not. The physics could be debated probably both ways, but it's kind of interesting to think of relating that to something like this, which is just a trippy change in reality. And I mean, I don't know, we're playing with quantum particles. If we think about quantum physics, maybe there's a connection there. I'm not really sure. Give a couple other examples here. I'm seeing the comments come in here. Interview with a Vampire. That I didn't never see that movie, so that one didn't really relate to me as much, but I hear a lot of people referencing that one. It is now Interview with the Vampire, and that one is pretty puzzling to anybody who was into that movie. The sound of it, the flow of that title is just very different. Another similar one to that is Sex in the City. I was young when that came out, but I remember my mom watching it, and I remember it being Sex in the City. Could be wrong, because it wasn't a significant part of my development, but now it's Sex and the City. Sounds a little weird, but, maybe I was just incorrect in my memory. But then when I hear that 80-90% of people all remember In the City, I can't help but be a little bit baffled by it. Berenstain Bears. This is the first one that really popularized this from what first seemed to make it just pop on YouTube, where it became a really heated topic, is Berenstain Bears. I grew up with Berenstain Bears books alongside of like Clifford books, and the Berenstain Bears, I definitely distinctly remember it being spelled Stein in the word Berenstain. If you look up any copy of the book now, or any of the show, it's Stain, and it's even pronounced differently. Kind of mind-blowing, right? Or maybe not mind-blowing at all. Maybe we're from different timelines, or maybe I'm just having false memories. I don't know. I'm open-minded. Let me read this comment here. Yeah, time travel is I don't know. It seems hard to believe for me, but I'm definitely open to there being seemingly absurd possibilities being a reality. I'm definitely open to this idea. Another couple examples here. Daylight saving time, or daylight savings with an S, not a big deal. Seemingly mundane, yes. I remember it with savings, but all the official recording of that time is without the S now. Here's an interesting one. Biblical scripture. And this is where it kind of gets mind-blowing for some people, because you think people that are really into the Bible and take it very seriously and have read it a lot of times, you would think of all people, they would know the scripture. They would have certain lines memorized. Apparently biblical scripture is coming up different now than it was in the past. Certain things have changed. One example that I just heard about today is some kind of quote that says something about a lion laying down with the lamb. I remember that in Bible school as a kid. I remember hearing that phrase, the lion laying with the lamb. Possibly seeing illustration of it. I don't really remember all the way. That's not in the Bible now. Now it says a wolf, something about a wolf laying with a lamb. Maybe any really hardcore Christians could chime in on this and give their 2 cents if that sounds strange to them. There were other Bible scriptures as well. Anybody who's particularly interested in that aspect, I encourage you to read up on it. Connection to deja vu, I see in the comments. Definitely. There's something, it's almost like the opposite of deja vu, maybe. It's a feeling of unfamiliarity, but I definitely see the correlation there. I appreciate that comment. A lot of them have to do with brands. Home Depot, I remember that being what it was. Now it's the Home Depot. Mundane, could have missed the word the, but it doesn't really quite sound right to me. Who knows? This one I definitely remember. Fruit Loops being spelled Fruit as a kid. Now it's spelled Froot, I'm pretty sure. I might have gotten it mixed up. Looney Tunes, I remember that being spelled Toons, like cartoons, makes sense. And now it's spelled Tunes. Kind of weird, right? I mean, I'm hoping that some of these resonate with you guys. Curious George. I remember being into that as a kid. I remember him having a tail. Curious George does not have a tail. None of the books, none of the show, any reference to Curious George does not have the tail now. And that brings me to another interesting point. Most instances of the Mandela Effect, you can look back at every reference to it, and they're all changed. Some, though, it seems that only the original things were changed, and for instance, the fan art or the merchandise associated with it maintain what people consider to be the original form. I can't think of good examples of it. I was doing this research earlier. But if you look into some of these examples, you will find that some people depict Curious George in fan art with the tail. And a lot of this fan art was made right at the same time that the books were popularized. And I mean, if somebody's going to take the time to do fan art, don't you think that they would be pretty aware of what the image looks like? Kind of strange. An interesting one, too. A landmass being to the west of Australia. Some people are debating that New Zealand, in an alternate timeline or in the past potential or whatever, Australia on the map had New Zealand off to the west of it, where now New Zealand is off to this down here, basically, to the southeast of it. I'm not particularly good with geography, but I can relate to that. I do remember kind of seeing something to the west of it. I was just looking up that Mandela Effect example today, and one of the videos I saw on YouTube, somebody showed a picture of the movie Dazed and Confused, which I remember watching, a stoner movie from, I don't know, I guess the 90s or something, 80s. In that movie, they show the kids spinning a globe, and on the globe, you can see Australia, and there is something to the west of it. That's pretty bizarre. You know, I mean, they made the globe incorrectly for that movie. I mean, I don't really quite have a good explanation for that. Mr. Rogers, I watched that one a lot as a kid. It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Clear as day. A lot of memory of that. That's no longer in the show. Any old references to it, all the originals, it says It's a Beautiful Day in This Neighborhood. Does not sound right to me. Does it sound right to you guys? I've only got a couple more. I promise I'm almost done. Silence of the Lambs. One of the most famous lines in that, when he says, "Hello, Clarice." I remember watching that when I was pretty young. The "Hello, Clarice" line is not in the movie now. Weird, you know? Maybe I remembered it incorrectly, but again, a lot of people seem to remember that line, so I'm left baffled. Mother Teresa, I have a memory of her being made a saint sometime in, I don't know, 90s, early 2000s. But I was young. You know, I was born in 88, so maybe I was just incorrect. But apparently she was made a saint in 2016, and a lot of people have a memory of her being a saint earlier than that. Pretty strange. Another one that's pretty common is brand logos having changed. Coca-Cola having a dash in between Coca and Cola. Now it just has a dot. Looks a little bit weird to me. I was never big enough into Coca-Cola for that to blow my mind. Kit Kat, same thing. Used to have a dash. Now it's a little dot. I don't know. Hard to say. Volvo, the car company, the logo now, it looks like a male sign. It's got like a little arrow coming off of it. I have never been into cars, but I do remember it just being a circle. So, I don't know. I don't remember the Terminator 2 one. I do, that's a good point though. I would really like to encourage you all to throw more examples out there. And I really want, my most important point that I really want to make with this video for consideration is this. Okay. So, if reality is changing in some way, if things are different on a day-to-day basis, think about the subtleties. Most of the examples of the Mandela Effect are intense in some way, like the main line in a movie, things being spelled differently. They're fairly blatant, okay? Now think though, if this is really happening, and if things are really changing, whether it's from quantum physics or whether it's from time travel or whatever, if things are changing, think about subtleties, okay? And try to pay attention in your day-to-day life and consider, let's say you walk outside. Think about the idea of, and I don't want to drive you crazy with this consideration, but I can't help but throw it out there. Think about, for instance, things that you don't normally pay attention to, like how many leaves are on a tree, okay? I mean, if reality is changing so much that famous movies are changing, what about little things like the number of leaves on the tree? The number of steps on a stairwell, okay? I mean, we could potentially all become schizophrenic and overanalyze this and drive ourselves crazy, and I would encourage you not to go quite that far. But that's what came to my mind when I first started looking into the Mandela Effect, is how far-reaching is this? Is it possible that there are little things changing all the time, like the color of a shirt changing by just little bits of wavelength? I mean, it's insane. It really makes me it brings me to a certain level of like Zen awareness. It's like, I need to pay attention. I'm not going to drive myself crazy with it, but it's a fascinating topic for me, and it's fascinating enough for me to want to pay a little bit extra attention, and also to churn this discussion with all of you and other friends of mine. Tell me what you guys think. Are any of these, do any of these stand out to you? Do they all seem like nonsense? Is the topic just crazy? I mean, I'm open to hear any of it. You can say it's nonsense, it's all false memories. I'll be like, right on, very possible. I'm not really leaning on any one direction particularly, but I'm fascinated. I'm very fascinated. And I'm particularly fascinated with seeing some new examples pop up of this, because it seems like when I first heard about it, sometime in the last year, there was a lot less examples, and now more and more and more are coming up. Like I said in the beginning, the Star Wars with the C-3PO silver leg, I didn't hear about that one when I first read about this, and that one's intense. I mean, for me personally, I don't know. My brain's got to be glitching big time for me to have misread that or misseen that. And I guess just to close out, the idea of false memories, normally applies to an individual. Individuals do have false memories. Our psychology is a pretty profound thing. The idea of lots of humans having a false memory, I can believe that, but that's a phenomenon that isn't well understood if that is the case. If we have shared false memories, almost shared hallucinations, that's pretty profound to think that reality is made up of all these vibrations and particles, and that several people might all look at something and incorrectly observe it, and then later on go back and look at it and observe it correctly. That would be an explanation that would at least encompass the idea that objective reality is not changing, and rather subjective dictation of reality is changing. Why would it be changing? Who knows? Maybe cosmic radiation causing our neurons to fire in different patterns? I don't know. There's no real easy explanation, but I don't know. Let me see some more of these comments and see if I can respond on this. You think it's related to the CERN experiment? Okay, yeah. I mean, could totally be creating an alternate universe through particle acceleration. Yeah, I agree. If that is the case, it's going to keep accelerating, and we're going to keep seeing more of this. So let's be detectives. Let's have fun and figure it out, Throw any profound examples that you have at me. You can private message me or comment or whatever. I'm going to put this on my YouTube channel too, this video. So anybody who has ideas that what they want to share there with a wider audience, go for it. Let's figure this out, or just have fun throwing ideas around and wind up not figuring out anything. However it rolls is fine with me. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate the views and the comments and everything, and I enjoy sharing moments with you all through this virtual medium.